Hello and welcome to the Goal Difference podcast. Regular listeners will know that me and my co-presenter Lola are identical twins, but I don't think we could have more opposite feelings about football at the moment. A reminder, in case you missed it, I am a very contented Arsenal fan, and with me is my dear sister Lola. Uh, well, what are you right now, Lola? Well, Scarlett, people keep asking me if I'm okay, and the big answer is no, and the short answer is, listeners, you currently find me in quite a good mood because Scarlett's just told me about some very funny Wicked memes. But I think that just reflects my general state of mind, which is trying to cling to anything at the moment to bring me some kernels of joy in an otherwise dark and meaningless wasteland. Okay, so there we go. That's my rational, whimsical, wonderful, intelligent Liverpool fan sister Lola. So Arsenal fan, Liverpool fan, in two very non-identical places at the moment. So that's where you find us, everyone. Today on the pod, we are going to ask if Arne Slot has the answers to Liverpool's now definitive crisis. And we're going to be joined by a very special guest to discuss that, a regular on the Anfield Wrap, and this is Anfield among many other places, Pete Bolster. And of course, we'll also look back at what was a monumental win for Arsenal on Sunday, whether Lola likes it or not. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you?
I've been better, if I'm honest, Scarlet. I wish you would have invited me on after we beat you early in the season. I thought we were going to do it all at that point. It was just going to be so easy, but it certainly hasn't been that case. So, but yeah, how are you?
Good. Get your digs in early. I appreciate it. Right. You guys, me and Lola had a tough time deciding what to lead with because I felt the North London derby was a massive result. And I'll be honest with you both, although it sends a tingle of joy down my spine when I see you losing, it doesn't surprise me anymore. So we're here because Lola, you think, and I'm sure we'll hear from Pete about this, that this was the last straw for a lot of Liverpool fans with Arne Slot. So I want to go back to the game on Saturday first, a 3-0 defeat to Forest. Sorry to remind you both. Pete, tell me what went wrong.
It's very difficult to put your finger on it, really. But what I'm seeing is that Liverpool are soft. We look very good in sparring, and they're a bit like a boxer, leading up to a fight, a few days before, and you see them on the speed bag, and they look fantastic. And then as soon as they find out that the opposition punch back, they just wilt, and that is the major concern. Everyone we spoke about on Saturday that we played really well for 30 minutes. There was another 60 minutes in that game, and that's just not acceptable. I think the interview after the game, they asked Arne Slot what happened in that 60 minutes, and I nearly stopped the car on the way home because I was just like, but that's like, it's a whole hour. That's like 2/3 of the game. So it's unacceptable. I just think the weak mentality at the moment, maybe the players are suffering, maybe it's too many changes all at once. It's probably everything, really. But it's really hard to put your finger on. It's hard to be harsh, but at the same time, what you're seeing is defeat after defeat, and you can only judge what you can see.
Lola, do you want to weigh in? What did you feel when you were watching that game? Or did you watch it? Well, I mean, as everybody knows, it is illegal to watch football match in TV
Yeah.
in this country at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. But to be honest with you, I had a terrible feeling. I mean, part of me thought maybe that's based on last season losing to Forest at home, but I had a terrible feeling that playing a Sean Dyche team was not a good opponent for us at this stage. Um, I'm the one silver lining, if I can take this, and it's a premature silver lining, is that potentially this could be rock bottom, and we'll get on to this, Pete. But like, I did say after that run before the second international break, the Palace, Galatasaray, Chelsea week, I said it can't get any worse than this, and then the ghost of Mick McCarthy appeared on my shoulder and said it certainly can. So I'm taking a little bit of hope from potentially this being rock bottom. So I haven't quite written him off yet. Okay. Good to know where we're starting. I didn't watch the game. I didn't hate watch. I saw highlights on Match of the Day. From what I can gather, Kanate again wasn't at his best. He came off for Ekatike just after half time. Isak was hooked after 60. Robertson came on for Kirkez. So some of those changes obviously have to happen when you're chasing a game. Slot's hand was kind of forced there. But from the outside, it strikes me as odd that you're changing two of your back four. So, Pete, what do you think is to blame for how things are going?
I think I'd be very critical of Arne Slot in these situations because I don't think the players are helping him. I think that's been well documented, but I also don't think he's helping the players. And I think he's got to put a formation and an environment to facilitate the players to be able to do their best work. And I think making those changes, and you know when they're coming, they're coming on the 54th minute, the 55th minute for your full backs. I think it was 3 of the back 4 that changed by the end of the game on Saturday, and it's not the first time. It's happened over and over again, week after week. So I just think that's unheard of. I think since I've been watching football, your back four is your back four. I mean, to change one is a bit mad when you think about it. So to change 3, I think it was away to Chelsea as well. We changed 3 of the back 4. I mean, away to Chelsea. That's just a crazy thing to do. I think what's happened is with Arne Slot there was a moment last season against Fulham at home, and we had a man sent off, Andy Robertson, and to get back into that game, he put Ryan Gravenberg at centre half, and it was genius because he was playing centre half and he was playing centre mid when we were attacking, and he was hailed as this great tactician, and it was essentially like we sort of had 11 men. We'd end up drawing the game, and it was brilliant. But I think he's trying to utilise that same tactic this season. Now, he's become more reliant on putting Gravenberg there. So I know people will point to Kanate being really in poor form, and that's right. But it's also the sense that he just can't pass the ball out. And I think that's the biggest problem here, because you're missing Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. So as bad as Kanate is, he hasn't got his best mate there to bail him out, because that ball was always going over to Trent as an option. So the opposition were always trying to smother Trent to make sure he couldn't pass out, which was easier said than done. And if he did, he just passed it back to Van Dijk, and it was that lovely shift. You also had Andy Robertson, who wasn't the worst player to pass the ball out, but stylistically, that back 4 now are really, really struggling. So you see Arne Slot making those changes, but essentially your plan A then is flawed, and that's what's happening around 55 minutes every game. So I don't really know where we're at, and I don't know what the plan was in the beginning. What was the plan in the summer? Because as a fan, I was very excited to bring all these players in. It's not like I was protesting outside Anfield saying, oh, you shouldn't be signing this player or you shouldn't be signing that player. I was very excited, but now that I've watched a few months of it, I'm sort of scratching my head a little bit.
It's actually, for me, the difficulty with Slot, and I watched his press conference earlier today, and it actually made me feel quite guilty for some of the comments that I made in the wake of Saturday. But I will justify that by saying, as fans, Pete, we're allowed to be angry. You know, that is, it's a leisure activity. We pay to watch Liverpool and have fun, and it's not been very fun. But I do think he conducts himself very well, and there are a lot of factors that he is not to blame for. But what's keeping me up at night, literally, is the fact that at the start of this run against Crystal Palace, if you isolate that second half, Liverpool did enough to win that game. Liverpool won the second half on XG. We penned them in. We created tons of chances. We were closer then, and the margins were finer in defeat then than they are now. And that is my biggest concern. It's not about necessarily like playing blame games, because, as I've said, there's on and off pitch factors, and there's things out of the manager's control. But to me, it cannot logically continue in this way when we are further from a solution now than we were at the start of this run. So that's where I'm at with it. I want to put this idea to both of you, actually, because I was lucky enough to be at the Palace game, watching Eddie Nketiah's late winner. And I think you're right, Lola. You know, I felt not that Palace were lucky to come away with that result, because they battered you in the first half and like they created a lot. But by the same token, I felt that Liverpool were very dangerous for large spells in that game. And you know, ultimately for Liverpool to come away having lost that game was harsh. And a lot of the margins where you've ended up going on to lose have been so small. I haven't dug into the stats from the Forest game, but I gather the XG was fairly even, however much credence you want to give to that when Liverpool were chasing for a large part of that game. But I do want to put this argument to you, Pete. You know, you weren't really good enough to win 5 games in a row at the beginning, but you're not bad enough to be losing all of these games. So is there an element of it will correct on its own?
Um, no, I take your point. I think Liverpool are structurally broken at the moment, and I think that's why we've got this false economy in a sense of that we have a higher XG. We did have a higher XG against Forest again on Saturday. I think it was 2 point something to Forest's 1, which again tells its own story. But I just think structurally we are built to smother the opposition high up the pitch, but we don't win our duels, and there isn't a recovery in that transition. The midfield last season, I already put loads of question marks over it, so everyone, and I look a bit crazy, but everyone who says that it's the midfield that won the Premier League, but it started to change in the second half of the season, and I think the midfield three wasn't creative enough, and that's why he's went and got Florian Wirtz, and I also don't think it's fast enough. So for me, I think Alexis McAllister's a fabulous footballer, but I just don't think he's got that recovery pace. If you bring Curtis Jones in, it really unbalances the midfield because, again, he hasn't got that recovery pace. So when Liverpool miss a tackle, if any player misses a tackle in that first phase of the press, they're struggling. And as soon as the opposition get out, then their chances seem to be a lot easier than the ones that we've created. We spent so much time penning them in, like Lola said earlier on, and all of a sudden we've just lost the game. And I think it's a structure problem, and I think it goes down to the recruitment in the summer. We are structurally weaker than we were because Luis Diaz, for example, on the left, he was stretching the play. So when he's stretching the play, the opposition at that 5 yards deeper, the 10 yards deeper, whatever it is, but he also, he fought back. He was quicker as well. He was quicker than some of the players that are playing. He was more tenacious. So all of those things are just missing at the moment. And I do think, unfortunately, I know it sounds mad that the fact that we have signed so many players and we've put it down to that it's been too much change. I think we're a couple of players short now from finalising what we tried to change.
Pete, can I just ask you, what's your red line here, and has it already been crossed? Because I know that we all say things after matches when we're upset, and you know, I know there's a portion of the fan base that think it's absolutely mad that we're even having this conversation, but you know, this is the worst run of form we've had since that COVID season when all our defenders were injured. And again, no one was asking questions about Klopp then because it's behind closed doors, injuries, mitigating factors. But we were better under Roy Hodgson. You know, our results were broadly better. So I do want to ask you, as you know, as Liverpool fans, what is your red line? Have we already passed it?
I don't think we've passed it yet. It is getting more difficult. So I was walking out of Anfield on Saturday, and I was not surprised by some of the comments by Liverpool fans. Not that anyone wants them sacked, but the conversation was very much a similar mindset amongst. It was like a unified response. That it was the definition of madness. We've seen this play out before, and for me, it's not that we're getting beat. I think Jurgen Klopp lost 6 home games in a row, and that was one thing, and it was awful to watch at the time. So it's not getting beat. It's not the fact that Everton and Man United have just got above us in the league. It's not that. We can accept that. We can take our medicine. It's the manner and it's the predictability of what he's trying to do each game. But to answer your question, no, I don't think it's time yet. And I don't think Liverpool fans will want him sacked. Liverpool are definitely not a sacking club. We've never sacked the manager, as far as I am aware, up until FSG took over. And since FSG have taken over, they've sacked 3 managers. So
Did they sack Hodgson?
they sacked Hodgson, they sacked Rodgers, of course, and they sacked
Kenny.
Dalglish.
Yeah, Kenny.
Yeah. And I think Kenny is the one that we should be looking for here, because Kenny Dalglish didn't have the worst season. I know it wasn't a great time at the time. We got to 2 cup finals. If he won the FA Cup and won the second trophy that season, the rumour was that he was going to be sacked anyway because of Champions League football. So I think the line is, if Liverpool continue in this spiral over the next few weeks, we spent a lot of money in the summer, and the people above will want to return on that money, and not qualifying for the Champions League is not acceptable, but also not going into the deeper stages of the Champions League, because if you remember last season, we got an awful lot of money from winning Champions League football games.
And Lola, where are you on Slot in, out, Slot can't survive? Because I must say, you sounded a bit different to what Pete's just expressed over the weekend. So I want to hear from you. Well, the first thing I'd say is that what Pete says about Kenny is interesting, in that there's another parallel with that season where everyone was saying over the summer, oh, it's unprecedented for FSG to spend that kind of money. But the previous summer before Kenny was sacked, he was backed. They signed Downing, Henderson, Charlie Adam, all for north of 20 million, which is a hell of a lot of money back then. And, you know, they, as you say, they expected return on their investment and they didn't get it. So FSG have a precedent for acting ruthlessly when they have invested as heavily as they have. As for me, yeah, I'll admit I'm a fan, Scarlet. I was really angry and disappointed after Saturday. And look, there's so much context around why Liverpool aren't doing well this season, and it's important that we're mindful of that. But actually, I want to shout out Neil Atkinson, friend of the podcast, for his post-match review, which was basically to the effect of rage against the dying of the light Liverpool. I want to see some more anger and some more courage. And I think if you read between the lines of what me and Pete are both saying, we're looking for some fight. We're looking for, the lads that got us over the line to win the title, that scrapped for every point last season. I'm not seeing that. So there's two things can be true at once. It's that I don't really want them to sack the manager, and I don't believe in sacking managers, but what I am seeing on the pitch right now is not good enough. Yeah, I mean, I can see what you mean, when a team feels broken, like the task in front of the manager becomes Herculean in even returning to an equilibrium. So I understand, from the perspective of someone who's watched teams stop playing for the manager, for Arsenal and like Unai Emery, like that's tough to see. I don't necessarily think that's happening this year, by the way. And I am mindful of all of the factors around Liverpool's season that make this incredibly hard for non-footballing reasons as well. From an Arsenal perspective, though, like, it has been shocking to see the conversation change around Slot so quickly. I mean, you guys won the league last year, which for a club as big as Liverpool is still no small thing. And Klopp also only managed that once. I suppose the context, Lola, that I would apply to this situation is that City looked absolutely broken at points last season, couldn't string any results together. But, and mindful here of the context around Guardiola as well, having been so successful, but he was afforded a lot of time and money to steady that ship. Well, yeah, I mean, Pete, you've said, I think, that there's missing pieces in this Liverpool team. Do you think they'll back him in January to turn it round?
I think it all stems from the next few weeks. Again, it's the rumour mill. You don't know what to believe, but there was a contract talk for Arne Slot, because he only signed a 3-year deal anyway, didn't he? I believe. So he's 18 months into that. I think they will be a bit more hesitant right now to finalise that deal, even if they drag it out for a few more weeks, even if it's a bit of smoke and mirrors from the hierarchy of the football club. So I think they need to see what we need to see, is a bit of identity back in the football, because that's been missing for such a long time now. Even if you go back to a little part of last season, at the end of last season, it was missing. So if they back him, then possibly we can see them turn around. But I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know where this is going. I think we will win tomorrow night, but I'm just more worried over the next few weeks in the Premier League. Are there any signings
because for me, like, there's been so much talk about Mark Gay, right? But he's 6 foot and he's not an aerial monster, and Liverpool are struggling with winning their duels. So, are there any signings for you, Pete, that in your head, like, change it? And you're like, that makes me feel a lot more confident. If we were to go and get 2 in January, are there any that would really change how you were
Well,
feeling?
the two I'm going to be a bit contradicting here is, so I totally agree with you about Mark Gahey. The difference is he can play the ball out of the defence, so I think that'll immediately help Liverpool. But again, it goes back to what I said to you before about the whole recruitment policy, because Frimpong, if he was your right back, he's very small. Kirkes, left back, very small. That's 3 back 4, who stylistically don't pass the ball out, like we mentioned before, but also they're just small. And then you've got McAllister who's small, you've got Florian Wirtz small, you've got Mo Salah that's small. I mean, all of a sudden you're just like, what are you doing here? But I do think he would still make a difference. And the other one is Semenyo. I think Semenyo would be like that Sadio Mane signing a few years ago, where he would just ignite that front line, because with the lacking major width, the lacking someone who runs in behind, and the lacking penetration, but really someone who takes the ball, takes the men away from people like Mo Salah to do their tricks and their passing, and the same for Florian Wirtz. Someone like Florian Wirtz needs someone to pass the ball to. There's no one running and making those runs, or very much like Cody Gakpo, who has been effective in the Liverpool ship, but it's very predictable. So it's very easy to play against. So I think them two would be the real ones that would make a huge difference. Personally, that's what I think. And I think it might just happen as well. I just worried that in the next couple of weeks, if Arne Slot was not to do the business, what would the hierarchy do, and what would they do?
Yeah. But Pete, I've put this to Lola quite a few times, so I know. In fact, I've argued with Lola about this quite a few times. But we're sitting here talking about signings after you spent an unprecedented amount of money in the summer. Arsenal did too, by the way. I'm not saying it from a judgmental perspective, but to me, that reads like a misallocation of resources. And I'm curious what your take is. Obviously, you had to make attacking signings for various reasons. Diaz left. But did it strike you as odd that you signed Isak for the amount of money that you did, and then Ekatike, who I believe is a fairly similar player, for a big fee as well? You're discussing potentially signing like someone like Semenyo, who can run in behind a defence and penetrate. You had to replace the fullbacks for various reasons. Robertson seems like he's aging out of the team. Trent moved on. And that was a kind of much lower part of the market, really. And Lola's argued with me about who was available, but I'm just curious, what did you make of that allocation of resources, and did you think it was the right thing to do at the time?
If I'm honest, at the time, yes, I did. I was just so excited for the season. We're the Premier League champions, and I actually thought, despite Liverpool's success last season, we did need new attackers. So for me, I was very excited. I was a bit disappointed we didn't sign another left forward, despite all the money that people say. I think allowing Luis Diaz to leave and not replace him was detrimental. I think that's proved that. I think quite a few Liverpool fans were very similar minds to me, so it's not like this is a Heinz. I think everyone knew that. I think the amount of signings, the amount of money, I was probably less surprised, because a few years ago we had Michael Edwards, Ian Graham, Julian Ward, over a course of time, a period of time, all left the club. So Liverpool didn't have a sporting director. And if you remember at the time, Jurgen Klopp had to bring in his own sporting director, because I can't even remember his name.
Big George Schmadker in the Ibethan Villa.
And he only come for 6 months. And I'm not even sure he was there for 6 months. I think he was paid for 6 months, but I think he only turned up for about 6 weeks, because Jurgen Klopp was trying to do everything at the time. So Liverpool's recruitment over a period of time, for a couple of years there, they didn't get in the reinforcements that they should have. So we've been short of centre half, we're not been thinking about the full-back positions, the midfield. I'm still waiting for us to sign a proper number 6, because Ryan Gravenberch was a revelation last season, but I actually think he's number 8. Don't think he works there, personally. And even if he does, you can't consistently, or play the same three midfield every single game for the rest of eternity. It just doesn't work. You do need more players. So the amount of money didn't surprise me. No, I get the whole point of Ekitike and Isak. I just thought Ekitike might play a bit more on the left sometimes. I thought we might get them in there as a front three and we might just see something a bit different. And that's when I'm a bit surprised about Arne Slot, with about like he hasn't tried that. Maybe it's through fitness or whatever. But on the weekends, you start an Isak. I'm like, well, if you start an Isak, well, what's Ekitike done? Then he needs to play. The only thing I'd just say one more, Scarlett, is that we speak about managers. I just don't think he has that love from the fans, because he's only been there for a short amount of time. And when you're used to such a big charismatic figure like Jurgen Klopp, that coolness was great and it was refreshing, and the way he conducted himself with the contract saga last season was all brilliant, but you don't have that same feeling towards him. And I have a mad theory about football managers, and I think most football managers are not, they're not the great managers. So, like, in a sense that they're not truly like, when you have like a manager like Alex Ferguson or Bob Paisley or Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp, they continue to win and win and win, where some managers come in and they win and they leave. And I don't know if Arne Slot's already done that. And now that he's got some of the footballers that he's trying to make his perfect picture, that's where it's starting to break down. Now, that's me blaming Arne Slot when I don't really know who signed the players. I did say that earlier on as well, so I have to caveat that by that. But sometimes I see it's like you might think it yourself of Arsene Wenger. When he first come in, he had a back 4-5 with David Seaman and Lee Dixon and Nigel Winterburn and all these tough players that were proper old school, went back from George Graham. And it worked with all these flair players. By the end of it, he had flair players everywhere and they could all pass the ball and they were all great, but they were a bit of a soft touch. I don't know if we've accelerated that with Arne Slot by giving him so much players already in the summer.
Yeah, well, I think, in Wenger's case, the recruitment was suboptimal after we moved to the Emirates because the money wasn't there to go and sign those physically dominant technicians that we had before. So I suppose contextually it is still interesting because, as you acknowledge, you've had this massive cash injection, and Lola was sitting here in this podcast at the beginning of the season talking about putting her foot on the throat of the rest of the division. But we are where we are now, so I'm going to ask you both, and I just want a one-sentence justification. Pete, who comes in if Slot goes out and why?
Ooh, Jurgen Klopp. I listen to his podcast. That's all. I'd have him back in so quickly. I'd definitely have Jurgen Klopp. The only other one, and he said one sentence, is Areola. He looks like the guy for the next 5-6 years, and I'd rather Liverpool got him than Manchester City because I have a feeling Guardiola's going to leave soon.
Very good. Lola? I'm going to break the rules because Pete also broke the rules and said 2 names. Klopp, I feel the same as you, Pete, in a heartbeat. And I think he's the only one who could step into the dressing room and immediately manage the Jota situation and not sound tone deaf to the players, because he obviously, managed him. He knows the group, and all of the history and brilliance of Jurgen at Liverpool. So I agree with you. When I heard that interview on Diary of a CEO, I thought, this is interesting. He is kind of putting himself in the frame in a way that he really didn't need to. So yeah, look, if Jurgen wanted to come back, it would be a pretty simple decision for me. The other one is Xavi Alonso. He was, and this I think is potentially more viable because Klopp fell out with just about everyone in the hierarchy at Liverpool before he left. The Michael Edwards, Julian Wards only came back to the club after Klopp left. And Alonso is in big trouble at Real Madrid, despite the fact they're top of the league. Vinicius Junior's briefing against him in the press. And I think, once that starts happening at Real Madrid, things tend to only go in one direction. So I could see him being sacked and potentially Alonso coming in the summer because he would slide right into that hierarchy. Yeah, that's my theory.
Or Florian Wirtz in Frimpong as well, hasn't he?
Exactly. Just imagine it would be so good. What? So you're playing a 5 if Alonso comes in?
I don't care what we play as long as we win football matches and we entertain. At the moment, we're doing neither.
That is a fair enough assessment of where things are for you guys right now. And I think that is about all on Liverpool. Pete, thank you so much for coming on and for your time. Where can people find you?
God knows at the moment, but I'm in the process of starting my own podcast, so that will be launched hopefully in January. And then just if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm just literally Peter Bolster, so it's no gimmicks. Just search my name and I'm there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Pete. We can't thank you enough for coming on. Okay, that was Pete Bolster, everybody. Thank you very much to Pete. And now, I have found it somewhat cathartic to be asked about Liverpool so much, but I know that this section of the podcast about the North London derby is gonna be painful. So, Scarlett, let's rip the band-aid off. You were at the game. How was the atmosphere? You know what? We'll caveat this by saying for the Emirates, the atmosphere was electric. And I don't use that lightly. Basically, I found out a few days before the game that there was a TIFO in the works. And for obvious reasons, Arsenal fans will know, I was slightly perturbed because of what happened with the whole gun logo gate against PSG. But what I'll say is that the TIFO that was then unfurled, the kind of full length of the North Bank, that was a collaboration, I think, between Dan Evans and 1886, two like very, very talented sources of kind of Arsenal illustrations, merch. They're great. So what unfurled in the North Bank was just perfect. Like, I mean, obviously it was captioned by "These streets are our own," like slightly corny.
Wasn't it made by Adidas? Because I
No,
noticed that the night. No, it was. I'll tell
no,
you why. No, it was. That's factual.
it was.
No, it was. And then all the Nike logos were obscured, and all the Adidas logos were brought to the
Well,
front. So
it might have been possible that Adidas had to be foregrounded because we're an Adidas club. That's certainly possible now. But I know who designed it. I know it was them.
it's just so plastic of Arsenal to make their
But this
allegedly
is
brilliant
this is
tifo.
the. I mean, and we're supposed to be talking about the fact that the atmosphere is good, but this is why I think it was good, because for whatever reason, Arsenal are quite tight on letting banners and flags into the game, so you can't bring in your own. And for whatever reason, I mean, a lot of people will say it's because the tifo the Ashburton Army came up with last season was crap. They have stood in the way of people producing their own things. But in this case, they collaborated with the right people to create something that struck a chord. And what that did, alongside the slightly silly light show, was generate a really special atmosphere and vibe. Like, the last North London derby had no pyro, no nothing. It's always going to be a special game. But as soon as I sat down, or I didn't sit down. As soon as I arrived at the ground, I
In the
thought,
family enclosure.
yeah, block 28. What's your problem? As soon as I arrived, any kind of Derby Day doubts I had about, oh, this is a really big moment, evaporated, because I got that sensation that you must have experienced before at Anfield, where you just think, this is special. This is, our home ground advantage is going to do its thing here. And I have to give props to the TIFO for that, and also to the fact that we were wearing our home kit and Spurs were wearing their home kit. And I think proper colours in the derby go a long way to making it feel correct.
How very old school of you. I would say the best atmosphere that I saw all weekend actually came at the Principality Stadium in Wales. And I'm not a rugby fan, but again, this shows that I'm plumbing the depths really in terms of trying to avoid watching football. And it was Wales against New Zealand, and they closed the roof, and they had the most unbelievable rendition of the Welsh national anthem, like resonant, and like everyone in Wales can sing. I think that's like okay to say on a podcast. Um, and they sang it beautifully. And then you had the hacker where they turned all the lights off. So it was like really cinematic, focused on the pitch, and had like fog machines. And honestly, the
sporting spectacle of it was enough to almost make me want to watch rugby, but not quite enough. But that was unbelievable. So, I do know a thing or two about good atmospheres, Scarlett.
And Lola, you're leaving football to start watching another sport, and you fled North London on the day of the derby, am I right?
Fled is the wrong word, but I think given where my team is at, I didn't want to be sitting next to the stadium and hearing the cheers because, listeners, I'll be frank with you, it's very tough as a supporter of a rival living in the eye of the storm. I can't escape it. It was only a few weeks ago that I found out about Esteval's goal because of guttural cries from down the street. So it's tough going at the moment, and I didn't feel like listening to it from next to the ground. So yes, I did decamp to another part of North London, but not very far away.
And can I ask you, Lola, before we get into the match, what you were feeling when you saw the goals going in?
I wasn't watching. I don't really make it my business to watch Arsenal. I find the football very sterile. No, I mean, this is the thing that I can't quite get my head around. And it goes back to our argument at the top of the show. I am not remotely shocked that Arsenal beat what I think is a distinctly average Tottenham side. Did I think there was a possibility that Spurs could nick something given their away form and that Frank is a savvy manager? Yes. Is the gulf between Arsenal and Spurs massive at the moment? Yes. So therefore, am I surprised that Arsenal battered them? Absolutely not. Arsenal haven't struggled against Spurs in recent years, apart from that one game under Ange where it was 2-2. So I just really wasn't. I'm really not surprised by it.
No, and I think, like, obviously in the span of statistics, that result isn't surprising, but the stakes are understandably high going into a North London derby in that context. And, I have to say, my first thought when Frank took over at Spurs was the derby is going to be a lot more awkward. And it was awkward for about half an hour.
Okay, let's talk about goals. I hear there were some good goals. Do you want to tell me a bit about them?
Yeah, Lola, 4 goals from open play, which takes Arsenal to joint top scorers in the league. And I think we've scored the most open play goals of any team in November.
Hey, I've got a stat for you before you get too carried away. Liverpool have created 24 chances from open play without scoring a goal in their last 2 games, and prior to the weekend were top of the XG charts in open play. So carry on.
Okay, goals. Yeah, so basically the first 30 minutes were tough. I saw Spurs line up, you knew what they were going to do. They had 5 at the back, they had Bentancur and Polinia, and then they had what I thought was quite a uninspiring front three of Kudus, Odegaard, and Richarlison. So I have to say, despite them, they were dogged, they were playing as you would in a derby at that stage, you know, like flying into every duel, making it very difficult for Arsenal to progress the ball. I would still rather be, and obviously there's that slight sinking feeling when you come up against a low block like that, especially as an Arsenal fan. But at the same time, I really wasn't nervous that they were going to take the ball and do anything for us. It's not against us. It's not like they were having opportunities for transitions remotely. So within the first feverish 5 minutes, Eze delightfully just dinks it over the top for Rice. And from where I was sitting, that was a huge chance. It drops over Rice's shoulder. He volleyed it very cleanly straight at Vicario. And actually, when I look at the highlights with hindsight, it's not an easy chance. But in my head, I was thinking, shit, it could be 1-0. Like, have we missed a chance to break the game open? So I thought Frank would be happy with the first half hour, but once we got the goal, which kind of basically I feel like there was a slight shift in momentum because something happened to a doggy. A doggy just absolutely lost his head, was really upset with Saka and just fouling him, gave away 2 free kicks in quick succession, and Saka tested Vicario from one of them and the crowd got up and then we scored. And it was weird. Like I thought there wasn't a VAR check for that goal. There was for the second goal for reasons that you'll be very familiar with.
That first goal, we've got to talk about it. Do you really think that should have been given?
The first goal? Why shouldn't that be
There
given?
are 2 players standing in the goalkeeper's...
That's the second goal.
Okay,
That's
well,
the
the
second
second
goal.
goal. Should it have
Okay,
been good?
well, can I just tell you about the first goal? The first goal was weird because Mikel Merino, who is ostensibly our number 9, had kind of dropped into that number 10 pocket, and Trossard was making a run in behind. And one of my fears going into the game was, oh no, if we don't have a proper striker, then no one's going to stretch the Tottenham defence. But actually, he, again, exceeded all expectations, dropped into a kind of false 9-10 position and played an inch perfect pass for Trossard. So all hail Mikel Merino, really. And it was a bit of a scruffy goal, but we deserved it. Second goal, the ball arrives at Eze's feet just inside the box or just outside the box. And he took an eternity. Like, I thought the chance was gone, somehow got his shot away. Yes, there were players standing in an offside position. I've seen angles where those players aren't
No, but
blocking.
this is the thing. It's
Hang
not
on,
that
hang
I'm
on.
not out here looking to disallow goals, but like Jay Bothroyd, Arsenal fan on Sky Sports, has said he can't understand why that wasn't disallowed. Like,
No,
I
I think
understand
I think
the reason I'm saying this, the reason I'm saying this is because the Premier League need to
yeah.
PGMOL need to put their shit out
Listen,
what's on and offside from
Lola,
a
don't get me wrong, that I understand the case for it. As I was going to say, I've seen angles where it looks obvious that they're in Vicario's sight line. They were in an offside position, blah, blah, blah. We know the argument for it being disallowed. For what it's worth, I don't think the Liverpool goal should have been disallowed. And obviously, I think Robertson was less in Edison's eye line than these players were
That's all
supposedly
I'm
or
trying to
not
say.
in Vicario's eye
That's
line.
all I'm
I
trying to say.
agree with you. But my personal feeling is that the Van Dijk one should have stood. So there you go. But my other point about it is I think that you can make things look a million different ways when there's so much ambiguity in the rules. Like, I don't think you can say something is nailed on no goal or not.
Okay, we got to move on. Which goal was the pick of the bunch? I think your choice is going to surprise a few listeners.
Yeah, I think sadly it has to be Richarlison's, doesn't it? What? It's actually the second time I've witnessed that from where I sit, and I think the first time might have been Palhinha. Actually, no. The first time was Ugarte, for Sporting in a really ill-fated Europa League last 16 tie, I think, that we really dominated them, but he just scored this unbelievable lob. And yeah, Raya, he has an advanced starting position. He's not the tallest keeper. It happens to him. It was pretty sloppy from Zubimendi, to be honest.
Mateta, Richarlison. Does he need to have a less aggressive starting position?
Well, no. I mean, Saar happened in pre-season, so like I'm not really willing to count that. And then if you kind of narrow down to the competitive scenarios in which he's been lobbed, okay, let's narrow it down again. Have those lobs seriously affected us in games? And I'd have to only say that Mateta did, because that was an equalizer. But like, no, I think Raya offers so much more than that costs us. He's a fantastic keeper.
Okay, that is that on the North London Derby. Arsenal listeners, for any more North London Derby content, you can find Scarlett on the Fan Voice on BBC Sport, and you can find her all over the place. Make sure you're listening out to BBC Radio 5 Live at 6:20 a.m. because Scarlett is going to be in the fan slot. And the big question that I have is, have you invested in an alarm clock?
Well, phones do a pretty good job these days, Lola, of waking you up when you need to be woken up.
Didn't your alarm go off at 3 a.m.?
Yeah, but isn't that case in point? Like, they do a good job if you set the alarm.
Okay, well, the alarm bells are ringing for the listeners because it is time to talk European football. The schedule is unrelenting from now until March, when we have the next international break, and both of our teams are in action on Wednesday night. Scarlett, you've got Vincent Kompany's Bayern at the Emirates on Wednesday. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, that's the top of the table clash in the Champions League. Bayern are perfect, we're perfect. I think on paper that's the biggest test we have in this horrible week. But I must say, like, my sights are firmly set on Stamford Bridge, and I think that is the thing when you're in the muck and bullets of the Premier League. that's kind of all encompassing. So it will be interesting to see what Arteta does with the team. I thought given that we had Bayern in the week, he left Rice and Saka on Sunday, and I couldn't really understand that, especially when the game went to 4-1. I was like, why do these people still need to be here? So I think probably when it comes down to the game, it's going to feel atmospheric. We have quite a lot of beef with Bayern, and it would be nice in this period of Arsenal being good to actually, give it to them a bit, because I think that quarter final where they beat us a couple of seasons ago, they were not the better team, and they probably are better now.
I agree.
No, I think Arsenal were better than that quarter final effort, and I think
No, but
we were
Arsenal were
distracted.
scared at the Allianz.
Yeah, and I think we were also distracted by the Premier League and a newer team. So it would be really nice if we could just go and get a flying result, which you feel we're totally capable of at the moment. I think the reality is the game is going to be very close, and it depends who plays. My kind of rational management brain wants us to rest some players or at least rotate. So let's see.
I think it feels a lot. There are a lot of parallels this week with when Liverpool had the week last season of Real Madrid at home and then Man City. And I think it's that toss up as a fan between really wanting to carry that positive momentum and make a statement
Yeah.
against a European giant, but also knowing that, like, the Premier League title race is, as you say, all encompassing. So I'll be fascinated to see how that pans out. Luis Diaz is suspended, which, I don't know if you're aware of the Twitter account Bayern Space, but they've literally been spot on about everything to do with Bayern. And apparently Diaz is shocked by the amount of space he's getting in the Bundesliga. So
Yeah.
I'm actually not in the camp that's up in arms about losing Diaz for 65 million, but I do think it's a loss for Bayern not to have him. So I'll be interested to see how Company sets up.
Right, Lola, tell me very quickly, how are you feeling about PSG? Sorry, Lola, quickly. Arne Slot's been speaking Dutch in his press conference. How are you feeling about facing PSV?
Well, I think PSV in lots of they're on an unbelievable run in the league, doing really, really, really well. But the way that they play football is going to suit Liverpool. They keep it on the deck. They play attacking football. There will be spaces to exploit. It will be a fast-paced game. It will be easy on the eye. At this point, the best medicine for Liverpool is to win games of football. There's been a lot of talk about what type of performance do Liverpool need to do. How can they alleviate doubts? All the noise is actually somewhat irrelevant. Liverpool, there's two factual elements here. Liverpool need to win games of football to feel better about themselves. And Alexander Isak needs to score goals for Liverpool. So for me, I cannot even conceive of a scenario tomorrow night that doesn't involve Liverpool winning and Alexander Isak scoring. And that is all I am prepared to say about that game.
Yeah, and I think we beat them 7-1 at their place last season.
Well, we actually went there after already having qualified top of the league phase and lost in what was a very odd game of football where we played a fully rotated 11. And that was the first of Pora Marinello's 2 red cards on his 2 starts for Liverpool. Okie dokie, that is where we are going to leave things on the goal difference. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much to special guest Pete Bolster. Pete, my heart goes out to you. I can only hope that we get to speak again under happier circumstances. Please do keep the comments coming, keep the views coming on YouTube, across all audio platforms. And don't be afraid to comment if you've got a question. And yeah, keep the love coming. Thanks for listening.